AskReddit by Aunt Meg. What is your darkest secret? I did a favor for an organized crime figure in the 90s. I heard you paint houses. I inherited but ton of money and haven't told anyone for years. I have lived very modestly, but one day I plan on completely disappearing to my countryside house where no one will find me. Whispers, take me with you. I worked in a crematorium in the late 80s. We had a shelf in the back that we stored cheap plastic urns on. One night as I was sitting and waiting for one cremation to finish, there was a loud crash that scared the shit out of me. When I went back to look, the shelf had collapsed. I ended up just scooping the ashes back into the containers but never told anyone about it. You probably just created like 20 haunted houses wherever those mixed up urns went. Male. I've been selling my foot pics and videos pretending to be female for years. Thought about it a few times after a friend of mine, made 5k in a few weeks on live with only feet pics. My dad sexually assaulted some underage girls and killed himself with a gun before facing his charges. It's not really a secret, but I don't like telling people because it gets a really pitiful reaction that makes me feel uncomfortable and somehow guilty. Sorry that you even had to experience knowing what he did and his death. Be well. About 16 years ago, my parents, 51M/49F at the time, got a divorce because my mother turned out to be cheating on my father with a 15-year-old she had met in church. Once the divorce was finalized, my father began to date his biological cousin and almost married her. This is a TLDR version of what happened, but it was a whirlwind of WTF moments for about 3 years as everything came out. To this day, they act like nothing either of them did was wrong. What? I once was involved in a university black market where they handed me out past exam papers because our professor never hands out one for us to practice. I studied them with a friend of mine. A week after, it was the exact same exam word for word. Only the year changed. I memorized the answers off by heart. I finished in 45 minutes, fucked around and pretended to think for 2 more hours to avoid getting caught. I got a 95% in an engineering exam with a poker face. Quite impressive for a cabbage. Deleted. I'm sorry to hear that. Before everyone found out, what was he like before that? Did he seem mean? Or did he seem nice and trustworthy until everyone felt betrayal from him? Not my deepest secret, but a card I keep pretty close to my chest. Nearly every week of my life since age 19, I've had a vivid dream about my high school girlfriend. I'm 47 now. Is this a common thing? I experience this as well, but only a few times a year with a girlfriend I had in middle school lol. I got my first BF when I was 19. He was also 19. The relationship was incredibly toxic and abusive. The level of I'm not allowed to pick my clothes or friends or classes without his consent kind of abusive. Later on, he would throw furniture at me, try to break my arm with his bare hands, threaten to kill himself if I left, kidnap my dog, and stand in front of my car so I couldn't leave. I was trapped for 2.5 years. During that time, I was falsely accused of having a sexual relationship with my co-coach who was 45 at the time, when in reality, my BF was cheating on me. So when he wanted to lose weight, I told him I would cook for him. What he thought were healthy, chocolate protein shakes were actually full fat, chocolate shakes with about a cup of added sugar per serving, plus protein powder. He gained 40 plus lbs over a year. I want to feel bad about it, but I had to call the cops on him for domestic abuse. So I don't. Haha, this is some real Mean Girls type shit. Love it. I convinced my rapist to let me tie him up under the guise of a sexual favor, then recorded him apologizing to me. Then I sent the vid to his mother. My best friend and husband know about this. Fuck yes. I'm a victim of human trafficking. Between the ages of about 3-7 my mother would take me to the next town over and hand me over to a pedophile. I would be there a couple of days at a time, and when she would come and get me, he would hand her a bunch of money. These were my earliest memories. Barely anyone knows. I feel like if people knew they would see me differently. I am so sorry this happened to you. No one deserves this. Not me, but a family member. She denies it still, but I know the truth. I watched it happen. She was maybe 10 at the time. She set a park amphitheater on fire. Decided she didn't want to go to jail, so she found a cup in the trash and ran back and forth from the pond trying to put this massive fire out. Fire department showed up and saw her doing that. She got to ride home in the fire truck and they gave her an award for community action or something along those lines. When I was around the same age, I did a similar thing. For as long as I can remember, I loved setting anything on fire. My elementary school was a couple blocks away from my house, and one evening I walked over with a lighter I stole from my stepdad, after getting mad at my mom. They had a garden at the time where different grades would take turns watering and weeding it. I had some beef with this boy in my class, and his favorite thing to do was work in the garden. The next day was our class turn to take care of the garden, so my dumbass decided I would light the crops on fire and then wait to see his face the next morning. Welp, as you'd imagine, the fire quickly got out of hand and I panicked and ran all the way home. I went around the house and snuck into the backyard gate and laid in the hammock. Shortly my mom came out looking for me and told me it was time for bed. The next day. My mom was an alcoholic with schizophrenia. She was pretty abusive to my dad and me. My dad died from terminal cancer, but once when he was ill when I was 18 I came downstairs after hearing shouting to see him sobbing on the floor begging her to stop screaming at him. It was only the second time I'd ever seen my dad cry, all the abuse, and I'd never seen him break down. Something snapped and let's just say I got physical with her, which culminated in me whispering in her ear that if she so much as raised her voice at him again she'd leave in a body bag. I think she knew I was serious as she cut most of her shit out. Deleted. My grandpa showed me a picture of a family reunion from back in the 70s. He pointed out this fat cat looking guy and told me that it was his cousin from New York. He said he would show up to these reunions and shower everyone in gifts. I googled the name and turns out that that guy was in the mafia and had a very large part in a historic moment for organized crime. Go on. I have an unreturned library book from when I was a kid. Tropic of Cancer? George. Deleted. I was in the same boat as you a couple years ago. It is a very hard situation. My best advice is find a therapist. Mine saved my life. I stole and threw away my mom's six as a kid. I've punched my dad in the balls in his sleep and quickly hid before he even noticed. He was an ass. This one got me to chuckle. One summer, I fell in love with my cousin when I was 13 and she was 14. During her visit, she kissed me. I said we couldn't do that again and she agreed. But she added that she was glad that we kissed at least once. Nothing else physical ever happened between us. We still see each other sometimes now. And every time we're together, I wish she could have been anybody else's cousin. Just not my cousin. She once told me outright that she wishes the same thing. She brings her husband to family reunions, of course. He and I look alike, have the same hobbies, share the same sense of humor, etc. But so far, nobody seems to have noticed that she married my clone. I asked her about that once. She said she really does love him and she loves her marriage. But she added he was the next best thing. If only you were Targaryens. I was about to say that I fucked my stepsister, but then I remembered this isn't anonymous. Almost got me, haha. Did she get stuck in the washing machine again? I called Sif on a friend and her kids eventually were removed from her home. Still doesn't know it was me. Department of Children, Youth and Families. If anyone wonders. I was pregnant at 18 by my father. No one in my life knows. I moved away. I went into labor at 37 weeks. She was perfect. She just didn't breathe. They tried for ages. In the end, they put her in my arms and said there was nothing they could do. Throughout my whole pregnancy, I wondered how I could possibly love her given how she came to be. I was so alone and confused. I wished her away on more than one occasion. And then it happened. It hurts so very much every day. It's been 29 years, and it still hurts every day. I've never had another child. It's the price I pay for wishing her away. Your pregnancy wasn't your fault. You were a victim. And it's natural you would wish the child away, that it never happened. I don't know who wouldn't feel that way. Imagine all the complications, guilt, and shame it may have caused if your child had lived. I would think of it as a blessing in disguise. I hope you someday have a child with someone you love. Best to you. I nearly killed my brother accidentally. When we were kids, we were playing outside and he just kinda annoyed me. So I went home, got a can of peas, and then proceeded to throw it at his head. He crumpled and was unconscious for a bit. I remember freaking out that maybe I killed him, but he came to several minutes later. To this day, almost 19 years later, he doesn't remember anything, and he doesn't seem to have any neurological problems. He seems normal. I haven't told anyone this, not even my parents. I just told them he fell and hit his head when they noticed the lump on his head, but didn't mention that he was unconscious. Hey man, nice shot. Wouldn't you like to know whether boy? Where are your parents? How many times a day that I wish I would die? Depression is an absolute cunt. I am fairly certain that a medication I took for 6 months about 12 years ago is responsible. Don't sick the admins on me. I keep on keeping on. My survival rate for my bad days is 100%. Edit. The medication was Chantix. And wow, the support I have gotten. Thank you and I love you. Good on you. I've been there more times than I care to count. It's always a pain to explain to a new therapist, friend, partner, etc. No, see, I have lots of practice wanting to kill myself and not doing it. I'm safe, just miserable. What medication, if I may ask? In my case, it's probably genetics and the behavior of the people I inherited my genes from. I'm ashamed to talk about my SAR because my attacker was a woman. I am too. No matter the gender of who assaulted you, it is still a very valid painful experience and I hope that you can let go of that shame at some point. I just spent an hour and a half reading all 950 comments on this post. That's not something I will tell anyone else. I got locked outside my new apartment one time drunk with no underwear, just a t-shirt, holding my cat. He wanted to check out the vestibule and I went to show him real quick, it's like empty, and the door locked behind us. I once went out to sweep the front porch in my PJs, which were a t-shirt and some boxer shorts. As I bent over to sweep up the debris in the pan, my shorts fell all the way down to my ankles while my ass was pointing in the direction of the street and my whole busy neighborhood. I too was not wearing underwear under the shorts. I will never know how many neighbors saw my flapping ass and vaginal in the wind that day, but still cringe thinking about it. I love my grandmother. She's an amazing woman who survived the Nazi occupation of her native Holland, the death of her husband in the 1960s, and raised my mother and my aunt largely on her own. But she's now 102, in rapidly declining health, hard to communicate with, and requires so much care that sometimes I wish she would finally die so the family can move on. That's a fairly normal feeling. Paid a beautiful female wrestler to pin me down over and over until I ate her pussy. Man, was she strong and skilled. Only you guys know. How much you pay? Where'd you find her?